Hello, everyone. Welcome from wherever you are in the world to the first of our series of webinars on our Photonics Frontiers Awards. My name is Warren Clark. I'm the CEO of Europa Science, a publisher of Electro Optics, and we created the Frontiers Awards as a way of encouraging our readers to talk about the projects they're working on that are bringing photonics to the real world. So with me today, we have currently 5, hopefully 6 by the time we get there, of our shortlisted nominees. We had over 40 valid entries to this competition. We've now whittled it down to 18. And over the course of this and 2 further webinars, we're going to be inviting the people that have made that shortlist to briefly talk about the products and projects that have made the cut so far. I'm delighted also with us today. We have Claudia Jaff from Lumencore, who is one of our sponsors, and we're very grateful for our sponsors for making this project possible. So, a brief thank you to our judges. So all of our entries went forward to our half a dozen or so judges, whose names I've just popped up on the screen there. It's not possible. We wanted to use independent judges, so that there's no kind of bias on our part, and these represent people that are kind of sort of well known in the industry, and I'm very grateful for their time in sifting through the entries and providing sort of valuable insight and getting us to this point. These are our speakers. These are who you're going to hear from today. I'm delighted to say our final speaker has turned up, so we will be hearing from all 6 now. So we're going to crack straight on because we've got 6 presentations to get through. At the end of each presentation, either myself or Claudia is going to ask one of the team a question, just to ask a little bit more information. So first up, I'm going to be handing over to Paula, and I'm driving her slides, so she's going to let me know when she wants the slides moving on. So Paula, over to you.
Thank you very much, Warren. Right, so I am Paula Oppenheimer, and allow me to introduce you to the ITBI, development of a handheld spectroscopic eye-safe technology for point-of-care diagnostics of traumatic brain injury, or briefly TBI. Next slide, please. So TBI is the leading cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide, and it is becoming one of the major challenges of the 21st century. So while life-changing decisions must be made rapidly, it is notoriously hard to diagnose at the point of care. And this results in incorrect patient management, and the chances of an individual suffering physical or cognitive impairment are massively increased. With millions affected annually, the burden that TBI imposes on society makes it a pressing public health and medical problem. However, current diagnostic technologies are woefully inadequate, either requiring large equipment, long waiting times, being highly invasive or not sensitive and timely enough, and point-of-care technology for TBI does not currently exist. And there is therefore an urgent need for new technologies to achieve timely intervention through rapid and accurate diagnostics at the point of care. Next slide, please. So this is where our groundbreaking device comes into play. It enables just the approach to address this urgent unmet clinical need via a completely novel point-of-care technology for instantaneous detection of specific neurosignatures by measuring changes in brain biochemistry. This technology combines Raman optics with fundus imaging of the optic nerve together with an eye-safe laser introduces into the optical path and focused by the eye. And this therefore pioneers the simultaneous acquisition of Raman spectroscopy and white light images from the eye. The iTBI device enables rapid acquisition of molecular fingerprints of TBI biochemistry to safely measure the proxies for cerebral injury via the optic nerve. And by analyzing the neuroretina, the projection of the central nervous system, it provides a window into the brain. By using simultaneous Raman spectroscopy and fundus imaging packaged as a low-cost handheld device, which you can see on this slide, provides the first tangible path towards the non-invasive point-of-care diagnostics of TBI. At its core, this device uses spectroscopy based on inelastic scattering of laser light by molecular vibrations in the neuroretina and the optic nerve. The device itself includes a monochromatic laser where the precision and wavelength specificity are essential for exciting molecular vibrations and capturing specific Raman shifts. And its optical setup is part of the integrated photonic design where the scattered light is passed through the optical filters to isolate the weak Raman signal from the intense Rayleigh scatter. And this is then detected by a portable spectrometer. Importantly, the ITBI does not require any invasive contact. It uses light alone to gather the diagnostic data, and it is essentially a hallmark of biophotonics and medical diagnostics. The ITBI is designed to detect neurotrauma at the point of care, either at roadside, beachside, austere combat environment, essentially where no expert evaluation or any urgent radiological investigations are immediately available. And this device therefore has the potential to completely revolutionize how TBI is diagnosed and triaged, and it is poised to provide enormous healthcare savings and improved clinical outcomes. But most importantly, it will have a huge effect on patients who experience the distress and uncertainty of TBI diagnosis. Next slide, please. So an overview of the technological development, where we firstly developed a bespoke artificial neural network algorithm called Skynet, which stands for Self-Optimizing Cohomology Index Network, based on self-organizing maps, as a generic framework for multivariate analysis, which simultaneously enables dimensionality reduction, feature extraction, and multi-class classification, as part of the seamless interface. Using Skynet, we classified TBI from spectral data and established validation on mouse eyes by detecting and classifying tissue-specific signatures of each anatomical eye section. This software integrated in the ITBI technology acts as a decision support tool where interpretation of the Raman data is automated and does not require any specialist support. And this dramatically improves the speed and the cost of the diagnosis. We have then developed the integrated portable photonic Raman fundus prototype device, which is able to measure signals in short time scales. And this device rapidly acquires Raman spectra from the optic nerve using an incident collimated beam focused by the cornea onto the retina. In further mice studies, we have demonstrated feasibility of Raman in differentiating TBI from healthy controls with quite high degree of accuracy across a range of injury severities. And spectral changes were associated with cardiolipin and metabolic distress. Subsequently testing it on peak size, we also observed an apparent enhancement of the high wave number bands, and the data displays a clear separation between control and TBI groups using the self-organizing maps. So overall, the impact of this highly interdisciplinary technological development has been advancing the fields of biomedical engineering, physics, and photonics beyond the state of the art, whilst also laying the groundwork for translation into real-world applications, generating numerous benefits for point-of-care diagnostics. So just to conclude, with the high socioeconomic cost of TBI, this technology will radically change the diagnostic standard of care for brain injuries. It will transform the diagnosis and treatment. It will revolutionize triage of patients through timely detection and intervention. It will reduce the socioeconomic burden and the immense caregiving expenses. But most importantly, it will save many lives. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Paula. Julia, can I throw it over to you to maybe ask a follow-up question there?
Yes. Presentation, strategy, creative strategy. I'm wondering, are there other conditions like vision problems or even TBI-related retinal changes from other eye conditions that might affect the eye and complicate the diagnosis?
So we do it in a very controlled manner. We start with a very controlled group of a small exploratory study, as we call, where we look at small, carefully selected group of patients without any underlying conditions in the first kind of phase of trials. For example, you're right to say that other eye conditions could be present, but cataract, for example, is the most known one. It is very uncommon to have cataract or eye, obscuring the possibility of looking in both eyes, so we can always look in the second eye if needed be. Most of the patients with cataracts, for example, undergo surgeries. It's usually a disease of older populations, and unfortunately, TBI is the biggest killer for 45 and under. So we will need to study this device in other groups. But most interestingly, the device itself can actually detect and diagnose the other diseases that you mentioned. Exactly that, right? We can look in the vitreous humor in the different kind of layers of the eye, and we can also look at diseases which evolve as a result of the TBI in longer term, neurodegenerative diseases. So the fact that we are capable not only to detect, but also distinguish and classify these diseases, we should be able to differentiate within these groups. But absolutely, this is the next phases of the later studies that we will need to look closer into.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Claudia, for the question and Paula for the answer. There is the opportunity for you as the audience to ask some questions if you're watching live this afternoon. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen for you to submit questions. If we've got time at the end, I'll be able to put those to the various speakers. So let's move on to the next one. Thank you, Paula, again. We're going to move on to Ronian now, who's joining us from Vancouver. So it's very early in the morning for him, who's going to tell us about his innovation. And you're welcome to share your screen, Ronian.
Right. Thank you very much, Warren, for the kind introduction. And also hats off to all the other speakers here as well. Very honored to be here. Let me share that screen. Okay. Is that screen shared?
Yep.
All right. So for me here, I'll talk about the Voluminator, which is our actually Venture Illuminator, because Venture is the company name. That's Venture Biotech Modules Business. And the Voluminator refers to these optical modules. They're about the size of a palm. They can fit in your hand, but we typically do not hold them in our hands. We mount them onto a lab bench or in a microscope system in an instrument. And inside of these modules are LEDs of any color. And they, together with the optical system, they project out a very uniform beam at a specified plane of interest. And so, and to lay it out, it looks like this. There's an LED inside. You switch it on, and the optical system will project a uniform distribution at an intermediate space. So if this vertical dotted line here is spatial dimension in, say, the vertical axis, then what you'll see is a very flat distribution of light. And you can use this plane. You can put a biosample there or any kind of sample over here, or you can project that with a lens onto a region of interest on a screen somewhere. Such as shown here. On one particular day, we had a green LED in hand in the lab, mounted behind a Voluminator module, and we used a projection lens. In this case, this projection lens was just a machine vision lens used in reverse. So where you normally would place a camera, we place the plane of illumination right behind here and project it onto a screen at some distance away. And if you scan across the screen, you have this very, very flat distribution of light here. So, which is nice because you'd always want to have flat illumination in a lot of kinds of applications. But how would we use this in a microscope? So on the left side here, with a bird's eye view, we have an epi-fluorescent microscope system. On the left side, we have the Voluminator module shining through what's called a coupler lens. It actually really is a collimating or field lens that will focus light into the back end of the objective lens. And we put here a biosample. In this case, it's epithelial cells stained with some dyes. And I don't even remember exactly what wavelength it was, but it's fluorescent. It's a dry fluorescent sample. And up here is where we put the camera, we mount the camera and tube lens. And you can see a very even distribution of light across the sample. To really prove that, if you replace this biosample with a blank fluorescent slide, autofluorescent slide, and scan across the diagonal, you see this very, very flat beam here, or a flat distribution. Now, it's very important to note that we can create this distribution to be flat either at the biosample plane or at the camera plane by tuning without any kind of digital manipulation. So let's show how that works. So that makes the Voluminator very versatile. The way it works is across a space in the longitudinal direction here, the distribution actually varies between flat, a dome-shaped profile, and a inverted dome profile at various distances away. And we have a little video here to demonstrate that. If you can see that on your screen, it's changing. What you see here is as we scan across the profile from left to right, we can see the distribution is changing from dome shape to flat shape and inverted dome over a dimension of about an inch or so, which is just nice because an inch is about the dimension that you would relay into the biosample plane in a microscope system. So that that versatility helps us because in some cases you may have an optical system such as this epifluorescent system we put together using some optics from the company Ebon Optics. We put a camera behind here. At the top here we've got a Ebon Optics filter cube, a blank fluorescent slide, and a voluminator module on the right side here. And because of some light clipping and vignetting effects, we see at the camera plane in the horizontal and vertical distribution, there's a bit of a slight dome effect. Our customers do not want to have to digitally correct this. They wanted everything flat in hardware. So what we did was just adjust the working distance of the voluminator module. We increased it a little bit, and you see here everything's now is nice and flat and vertical and the horizontal as well. So so that makes things very versatile and applicable to many types of applications, not just microscopy, but illumination, pattern projection, real-time qPCR, maybe even forensics as well. And this is actually my last slide. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie, and thanks very much. So my questions won't be anywhere near as technical as Claudia's, so bear with me. We spoke before, Ronnie, and so this is clearly got sort of applications in the medical field. But what's it actually going to do for people on the front line using those materials? Is it kind of speed of diagnosis or investigation? How's it going to help them?
A very good question. Thank you very much. Well, our direct customers are microscope integrators, and their customers are microscope users. And the customers that we've worked with, they don't want to have to, they want to be sure that when they look at a biosample, everything from the biosample in the image is from the biosample and not from some lighting artifacts. Any gradations in the scale, anything in the background, they shouldn't be from anything else but the biosample. And the only way to ensure that is to have a very flat illumination so that biologists, for example, will know that no other kinds of errors come from the system, and everything you see is as you see it from the biosample. So does it speed up analysis? Perhaps it does, but what it does is it ensures that the lighting is completely even and uniform.
So it's primarily about accuracy as much as anything else.
Accuracy. That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. All right, Ronnie, thank you very much. So next up, we have Francis from the Erasmus Medical Center. So Francis, I'll hand it over to you for you to share your screen.
Thank you, Baron. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Every 8 seconds, someone experiences a stroke. That means by the time I finish my talk, approximately 300 people worldwide will have had a stroke. Most strokes, around 62%, are ischemic, caused by blockages in blood vessels. A common culprit is the plaque accumulation in the carotid artery, located right here in your neck. When these plaques rupture, they send debris into smaller blood vessels in the brain, causing blockage and a stroke. Currently, to prevent a stroke, the primary solution is to surgically remove these plaques. But here is the issue. Our method for choosing who gets a surgery is imperfect. We currently decide based purely on the amount of narrowing of this artery, a measurement called stenosis. And that's a problem. We perform 6 surgeries to prevent 1 stroke in symptomatic patients. And in patients without a symptom, that the number jumps to 21 surgeries. And what is even worse is that 8% of the patients who are treated with medication still experience a stroke. Clearly, our current diagnostic methods are inadequate. But from pathology analysis, we now know that not all plaques will end up in a stroke. Certainly, certain plaques are more vulnerable, meaning they are of high risk of rupture. And there are some features associated with these plaques. So you can see a large lipid core, a thin cap covering that, and internal bleeding known as intraplaque hemorrhage. These differences in plaque compositions have distinct optical absorption characteristics. However, pure optical methods struggle here because human tissue scatters light, making high-resolution deep tissue imaging impossible using conventional optical methods. So how can we overcome this limitation? This brings to our groundbreaking solution, laser ultrasound for carotid imaging and diagnosis, LUCID. LUCID utilizes a technology called photoacoustic imaging, combining both optical and ultrasound imaging. So here we use pulse light to illuminate the tissue, which generates ultrasound waves when absorbed by plaque components. Sound waves are far less scattered. This allows us to image deep located plaques. Lucid employs a custom designed 3-wavelength laser diode developed by Lumibird and a highly sensitive acoustic receiver from Cyberdyne. This makes Lucid not only cost-effective and portable, but also the first point-of-care system demonstrated for carotid imaging. Our system can simultaneously perform ultrasound and photoacoustic imaging, offering both structural and functional information of carotid plaques. Here is Lucid system in action. On the left, you can see the carotid artery in the ultrasound image. You can see the structural information. This is the artery. And on the right, you can see in red photoacoustic image, which is overlaid on the ultrasound image. So you can see the functional information. Here you can see the blood content in the tissue. Let's see a few more examples from volunteers. So you can clearly see the carotid artery wall. And these participants are healthy and there are no plaque in it. But the resolution, imaging depth, and signal to noise ratio demonstrates that Lucid potentially can be used in clinic. But how about distinguishing vulnerable plaques? Earlier in our group, we have demonstrated multi-wavelength imaging in differentiating plaque components, especially lipid and hemorrhage in ex vivo plaque samples, validated through histology. Lucid's multi-wavelength capability will allow clinicians to apply the same technology in vivo, identifying vulnerable plaques in patients, something currently impossible in the current standard clinical setting. So behind this innovative approach, we have a powerful multidisciplinary collaboration. Lumibird designs the specialized laser diode system. Cyberdyne developed our advanced acoustic detection system, and our team at Erasmus Medical Center integrated this system and performed imaging experiments. And together, we are moving rapidly towards clinical studies with upcoming studies at prestigious Dutch medical centers, Erasmus Medical Center and University Medical Center Groningen. Our goal is to demonstrate the clinical efficacy and translate Lucid from innovations to standard of care. So why does this matter? Even if Lucid would detect only intraplaque hemorrhage, we will be able to identify approximately 50 to 60% of vulnerable plaques. By doing so, with a modest estimate, we can reduce the number needed to treat from 6 to 5 surgeries to prevent a stroke. This seemingly small improvement translates into massive healthcare saving. Europe spends approximately 60 billion euros annually on stroke care. By reducing unnecessary surgeries, we could save up to 17%, significantly saving healthcare costs. Moreover, stroke prevention market is already huge and rapidly expanding, projected to reach 85.5 billion by 2034. With Lucid already at technology readiness level 6, we are perfectly positioned to capture this growing market. With Lucid having the potential to revolutionize stroke prevention, improve patient outcome, and significantly cut healthcare costs, this is just not an innovation. It's a step towards saving millions of lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Claudia, have you got a question for Francis there?
Yes, great presentation. Certainly very worthy application again. Very interesting. You spoke a little bit in the synopsis about software updates and software innovations. And I'm wondering if you could comment a little bit about how the developing software package to accompany the hardware will help interpret complex kind of laser-generated ultrasound signatures.
Yeah. So mainly from the algorithmic point of view, we have several challenges as well. So we need to unmix and obtain these components separately. Like the goal is to show intraplaque hemorrhage separate and the lipid region, lipid volume to say. So unmixing is a challenge. So that's something which we are working on. So when light passes through this tissue from multiple wavelengths, they get colored. That means that the amount of light reaching the plaque is different. So we won't get the same spectra what we expect. There is coloring. So one approach we use is we use blood as a marker. So we know the optical properties of blood and we utilize that to correct for this. So these are some of the approaches, and also there is a lot of clutter because the muscle layer absorbs light and that also send out ultrasound signal. So we are also removing clutter to make these images usable for clinicians. So these are from the software side with what we are working on.
In fact, so I can imagine very complicated a mix of heterogeneous tissues. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Cordy, for the question. So that's the end of our kind of biophotonics category. So there's a thematic link between those three. We're going to shift. Maria is breathing a sigh of relief. So our next three are all more to do with laser technologies. So I'm going to hand over now to Dimitri from the Silicon Austria Labs, who's going to talk about something very different. So Dimitri, over to you to share your screen.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. Just a moment. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Good. So thank you for introduction. Good day, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor to be shortlisted for a Photonics Frontiers Award and to present our project today. From the name of the project, you might want to know why someone wants to ignite a rocket engine with a laser in the first place, of course. And the answer is because it's just a better way to do it. Laser ignition uniquely combines advantages of other ignition systems. It has low weight and dimensions. It ignites pretty much any fuel at any conditions, whether it's mid-flight or on the ground. And it's directly reusable, which is a huge trend in aerospace now, thanks to SpaceX. And altogether, it reduces the cost of flight, reduces the environmental impact, because you can use not only typical liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen fuel, but also liquid methane. It has a unique property of having much more precise ignition timings, and which in turn extends the resource of the engine and makes the flights cheaper again. However, to build a practical laser ignition system, one must address the typical optical problems in space-relevant conditions, like alignment must hold even at extreme vibrations. Temperature stability must be good enough to survive such that device survives the temperature change from -200 degrees of Celsius to +1000 in half a second. And this thing should be still compact and powerful enough to ignite the fuel mixture, because the typical ignition power density value is on the order of 10 gigawatt per centimeter square. And we started addressing those problems but more than 20 years ago by development of Hyperlas, a family of high energy lasers. It originally appeared as a response to the demand of automotive industry. They wanted to replace an electric spark plug by a laser plug. And if you want to mount a laser to a consumer combustion engine, you want it to survive vibrations, temperatures, require minimal maintenance. And we started relatively simple with the laser rod, separate mirrors, Q switch, but this overall device was just way too long to put it under the trunk. So we miniaturized it to something comparable to an old 2-button PC mouse. And I must say that up to this moment, there is no other device, package, or platform which can generate comparable energy or comparable peak power from such a small footprint. And this was quite the hot topic back then. Several groups and companies did research and development in this direction. There were cars running on, like car demonstrators running on the laser plugs as a primary igniter. We ourselves had a chance to work with helicopter turbines, and this all disappeared, or like in a fairy tale, turned in a pumpkin in 2014, when major automotive industry giants decided that they put their bets on the electrical cars, and all the funding and all the research and development activities in the direction of laser ignition for combustion engines basically died. So we switched to huge engines, to rocket engines, and we developed the 4th and 5th generations of our platforms specifically to ignite liquid cryogenic rocket fuel. And they saw extensive use on the test benches of German Aerospace Institute, DLR, where we had more than 4,000 successful ignitions. And ESA also has one of their missions in 2026 planned, where our igniter, our laser system, will be used as a primary igniter. And the 5th generation design was also licensed to Ariane Group for small-scale production. And as soon as we finished the pile of the certification documentation for flight certification, you would be able to buy a laser like that. Currently, we are working on the development of fiber coupling, fiber distribution system for one of the Ariane's main engines, basically, again, to reduce the cost even further. And let's take just a look on the technical details of our system. It's optimized to get maximum energy from the smallest footprint possible. So our systems are based on side pump monolithic cavity design, where both cavity mirrors and Q switch are optically bonded to a custom ceramic Nd:YAG laser rod. So the alignment is basically as good as bonding precision. This rod is in turn pumped by a hexagonal set of custom-built, again, wavelength stabilized diodes. This allows a very robust, very compact alignment-free solution with a constant power output thanks to the stabilization gratings. And the laser head, where this rod and the diodes are, is about 40 by 50 millimeter. It's powered by 20 by 20 centimeter box. And it generates typically 40 millijoule in 2 nanosecond pulse. In a laser ignition setting, specifically, this laser head is mounted on the wall of a rocket chamber, a rocket engine. It generates a burst of 50 to 100 hertz, and this burst is focused inside of the rocket engine, some centimeters away from the wall. And this train forms basically a train of sparks which ignites the fuel. If you take a look over here, don't be surprised by the sound, and I can play it once again for those who didn't see it. That's exactly what happens inside the rocket engine, basically. You get a non-resonant optical breakdown because of the high enough power density of the laser beam focused to this spot. And so who besides Ariane needs it? Well, cost per launch reduction results in a broad access of small, medium-sized companies to the space market, which is always good. It increases the competition and always brings some new and much more creative solutions. But our previous experience, for example, shows that there are a lot of ground-based applications as well. We have previously adapted our system for energy industry to ignite huge gas generators. We did laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy. There is a constant interest from laser material processing industry to monitor the quality of basically processed metals. And if you got interested and you think that your application may profit from high energy compact laser, we can build one for you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Dimitri. I'm fascinated by the pivot you were forced into by the introduction of electric cars. That's quite the pivot from the combustion engine to rockets, right? That's a big space.
It's similar to the moment when it's especially relatable to our academic folks here. When your paper is rejected from physical review letters, and instead of going down the impact factor, you go to nature. That was a similar type of decision to get big. And I'm looking forward to the moment when actually hydrogen-powered combustion engines pop up and we are back to automotive business again.
Okay. And is the I mean, you mentioned very briefly there about the reducing the overall cost. I mean, is the ignition cost a substantial part of rocket launch at the moment?
It's mostly not the ignition per se, but the weight of the system.
Okay.
So comparable by size and weight would be the chemical type of ignition, which is basically you have a torch, a chemical torch or a bomb, as you like, which is put inside the engine, and you set it off. It produces like 1 meter of the flame, which ignites the engine, and it flies. The obvious problem is that it's one-time use. You cannot reuse it mid-flight. The closest competitor to laser ignition is electrical spark ignition. But the problem there is twofold. First, you have to generate a lot of voltage to be able to create the spark, the arc, and to ignite something inside the rocket engine. And if you need a lot of voltage, it means you need a lot of weight, which costs. And the second problem is that if you have a piece of metal popping into the very aggressive environment of liquid hydrogen and oxygen, and you supply very high voltage there, then this thing erodes very quickly. So you have to replace it quite often, which doesn't go well with reusability and cost reduction too.
Okay. Great. Okay, fascinating. As I said, very different from what we've had before from the kind of biophotonics area. So let's stick with more lasers now. And Maria, I'm going to come to you next. So I'll throw the screen over to you to talk about lasers in electronics.
Yes, thank you so much for introduction. So I was doing my oof after biophotonics application because we don't directly save life, but we still do it indirectly, I would say. So at Track, we're doing AI-driven quality control for printed flexible electronics. I say because we are two, I would say, scientists who also trying to bring our idea to real world, as you said at the beginning, for the purpose of the award. So myself, I have completed my PhD in the field of terahertz metamaterials, and I work in the industry of printable electronics, and hopefully and luckily I have met Benjamin, who has complementary technical skills, and together we are changing the world of printable electronics production. So first of all, to start with, what is printable flexible electronics? Flexible circuits, they are transforming existing electronics around the world. So we are talking here about solar panels being printed, batteries being printed, and many more other devices being produced on the different type of the substrates, not only rigid and also flexible. And this technology, printing technology, has been existing for many decades already, but printed electronics is pretty recent and pretty new. It allows for high speed, high volume production and very high speed, very high scale. So we are talking about printing of 100 meters per minute of electronics. But the problem is what is existing today is the quality control. It's still done manually. So imagine someone running next to the production line, trying to extract any print parameters or doing it even afterwards. You can imagine how much waste is produced if we're talking about the speed of tens of meters per minute. And that's why we found the need that this quality control should be completely modified in order to improve this fabrication technique. So what is existing today, I have told already, it's a manual probing in order to inspect the functionality of electronics, which is critical. There are camera systems which exist in, but you can imagine camera, it can, the same way, it's just extracting the surface, it can say if it's deposited well, but it cannot judge about the functionality, which is the most critical for electronics. And there are profilometry, which is pretty familiar, optical way to inspect some of the deposition parameters, but most of them is done after the production. So it produces the huge amount of waste of the materials and as well as the time of people doing the job. So we were inspired by the idea of the graphic printing, where the color barcodes often printed on the side of the main package for food, for example, food packaging parts. And in our case, we proposed to print a metamaterials on the side of the main production line and inspect it with the laser and say information about printing actually. So how all of it started? Myself, when I did my PhD, you can see a huge optical table. If you work in terahertz lab, you know what it is. So there are laser and tons of optics around and electronics around it. And then I was very passionate about bringing this idea because I've seen how print electronics manufacturing working to this solution to bring it real life for the manufacturer. And here's on the right, you can see the transformation from this huge optical table towards a small, tiny device which can do this job very well. So this is why we build the company with Benjamin, and we have our engineering team working with us today. So to talk a little bit about our solution, so here you see a beautiful video of our system installed on the production line. And you can see tiny metamaterials being printed as a quality control structure, and it is backed with our laser system. And when we do this running at the speed up to 100 meters per minute, we have tested our solution and it works perfectly. We are able to talk about the functionality of the printing as well as of the other print parameters which are critical for the industry of printable electronics. So basically, with the development we are working on, we can provide automated AI-driven process control. Also, because we're doing it in line, obviously you can imagine how much waste is prevented because we can give the response about what's happening with the production line right now at the moment. So there is no waste is going to happen. And also, one of the very important points which we find out that by collecting this information, we can share operational skill sets between the people who are using this production line. So then our solution becoming like instant assessment, which I mentioned about monitoring key print parameters and provide all the statistics. But besides that, we are also becoming a subject matter expert for this industry. We can have historical data set, we can share it with all the departments, not only the people who are doing printing itself, and we provide all the traceability of what's happening in the production line. So by doing this quality control, as I mentioned earlier, since we do it in line, we save huge amount of materials and time, which brings savings in terms of money and as well as a CO2 emission, which is coming from material waste and the huge machine usage. So right now we are working with some of our potential customers and bringing our solution to their production lines. So here you can see ourselves happy when we did first validation in the production line, and we want to modify the way of printed electronics working today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Maria. So what does it take then to get something from this kind of proof of concept stage actually into the factories and doing the job that you've set out it can do?
It's a good question. Basically, we are asking our clients initially to print metamaterials or quality control structure. We are doing investigation on our end, and then we bring our system, install it, and we can do testing in line, basically. So we're just setting up our bottom line of our conductivity, for example, testing, or any other parameters, and then we can create our calibration, adjust our software, and make it run.
Okay. And yeah, I saw on your previous slide that you've got a customer already, right? So it's but the slide before that, I think you said you had
Yes.
a purchase request. Yeah, that's fantastic. Great stuff.
Thank you.
All right, Maria, thank you very much. So last but not least, thank you for your patience, Alex. Top of the bill, right? So Alex is going to talk. Interestingly, we talked about EVs earlier on. He's going to talk about the use of lasers in EV battery welding. So Alex, over to you.
Yep, thank you. Just sharing slides. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Great.
It's not a presentation mode. That's it.
Okay, great. So yeah, a bit of background to begin with. So what I'm talking about today is an optic that we've been developing at Biophotonics for application in laser welding. This is a beam shaping optic. Beam shaping is the idea of changing your Gaussian or flat top profile laser that you typically get into something else that might be more optimal for your industrial process. So while the Gaussian spot might be a smaller spot that you can achieve, it might not give you the best process that you can achieve. So you could get faster, higher throughputs or more efficient processes, or improve your process envelope. There's a wide variety of beam shapes that could be used and can be made. These can be done in a variety of different ways, but the way we do beam shaping is using refractive optics. We have this manufacturing process that's laser-based, where we can define arbitrary surface types. So this makes it easy to define things like a lens array, but also more free-form structures. We don't have any symmetry restrictions like you would expect in conventional optics manufacture. And this means we have high efficiency optics, high efficiency beam shaping with high power handling, but the system complexity is low, and it's a small footprint system to integrate into your industrial laser. Got some examples of these on the right here. The application we're targeting in particular is laser welding for electric vehicle batteries, for electric vehicle battery manufacture. In particular, the welding of aluminium 6082, which is an alloy of aluminium that's particularly challenging to weld with a laser. Typical methods require a filler wire and shield gas to make sure that you can produce a high quality weld. The beam shaper that we're developing is looking at eliminating the requirement for the shield gas and the filler wire, which makes it a greener process. I'm sure you're all aware that electric vehicles are a big factor in things like in reducing emissions. There's no value in reducing the emissions with your vehicle if the manufacturing process isn't just as green. So this is the optic that we've been developing. It's been termed the tail shaper because it generates this intensity profile at the bottom, where we have a high intensity peak that's at the center where you would normally expect from your laser. And then there's a tail of intensity that follows or precedes this spot when you're welding. Somewhat inspired by the directionality that you get in a welding process anyway. In this example, you'd be welding along the vertical axis of this spot. That's inherently directional, so the intensity profile optimal for this process, I would expect to also be directional. It's as I said, this is a fused silica optic, so it's a very simple component that gets inserted into an existing industrial laser system. So this diagram on the right shows a schematic of a process head that would typically be used for laser welding. This is a low footprint component that can be retrofitted into existing laser heads. The intention with this beam shaper that we've generated is to stabilize the molten pool flow and reduce thermal gradients in the process. Aluminium 6082 is difficult to weld because as it cools, you get an effect called hot cracking, where the cracks form along the center line of the weld, and this reduces the strength of the weld. And this is usually attributed to the steep thermal gradients expected in the process. By transferring some of the laser energy laterally along the direction of the weld, we're reducing that gradient, that thermal gradient, by applying some pre or post heating in the weld. Additionally, this elongates the keyhole produced when you perform laser welding, which means that there's a reduced probability of that snapping shut and encapsulating air pockets into your weld, which would cause porosity and again reduce strength. So we have a case study to prove that this beam shaper actually works. The first set of results across the top is for an unshaped beam, so we've got this roughly Gaussian beam profile. And this is a high-speed video showing the weld well, not in real time, as slowed down. So you can see this melt pool around the spot is quite volatile. There's a lot of motion going on in there. And every so often you'll see some ejected material, that's spatter, that would also be undesirable for a welding process, particularly in battery case welding, where you don't want to have any short circuits caused by spattered material. The lower two videos, these show the tail shaper being used in exactly the same laser system. So we've literally just slotted this extra window into the optical train and then run the same tests. And with this one is with the tail ahead of the main spot, and then the other video is with the tail following the main spot. The immediately obvious difference here is how smooth these are, how much less motion there is in the melt pool, and how less volatile these are. You also get a very different morphology of the weld afterwards. But the most important factor, of course, is going to be the strength of the weld. And in the top right bar chart here, we have the unshaped strength of the weld limited to about 175 megapascals, and this is limited by the hot cracking effect seen from welding this material. With the beam shaper put into place instead, we get an increase of around 40% to the tensile stress limit of the material. And we get much closer to that of the base material, which you would get if you have no weld join at all. So this really is enabling an autogenous process, so no shield gas and no filler wire required to generate the same performance and the same weld strength as you could get with those in place, which improves the makes it a greener process. You're producing less waste to do this while achieving the same weld strength. That's everything for me, so thank you for your attention.
Great, Alex, thank you very much. Claudia, do you have a follow-up question for this, for Alex's presentation?
Sure. You talk about a very particular metal, aluminum 6082 in this case, and I'm wondering aluminum versus copper for particular metals, a variety of metals. How does the beam shaping technique need to be controlled or modified to be metal specific?
So we would need to run tests in each case for each different kind of material. I would expect for copper in particular that you mentioned that this should also have a benefit, because especially with the tail preceding the main spot, because you're heating the material and you're changing the reflectivity of the material. That's the primary difficulty in welding copper, at least with near infrared lasers. There would be a degree of tailoring the beam shape, which is something we can absolutely do. This isn't necessarily the optimal beam shape, but we can tweak the length of the tail or the amount of power in it. There would need to be some level of design of experiment to decide what's the best for your particular application.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Claudia. Right, that brings us to the end of the half a dozen presentations. I think you agree this has been a fantastic demonstration of the variety of the use of photonics in real world applications. 6 really diverse, and that's only a third of the shortlist that we've got. So, Claudia, I don't know if you have anything to add on that about what we've seen today.
Well, I mean, I think it speaks to the nature of the industry, photonic industry. There's such a breadth of deserving applications throughout life and material sciences. And I think this swath, kind of the selection of applicants and investigators, is just a perfect reflection of what's happening in the field. Very much enjoyed your presentations, each of you. Thank you.
Good. Great. Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much as well for keeping to time. I appreciate we asked you for your elevator pitches today so we could fit all 6 in within an hour, which we have done. So I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for your entrance. Claudia, thank you for your sponsorship and participation today. We'll be announcing the winner on the 25th of June at Laser World of Photonics, so keep an eye out for that. We will be announcing a shorter shortlist, the finalists, if you like, in a couple of weeks' time once we've been through this stage of the competition. So please keep an eye on our website. You can see detailed write-ups of all of these entries on our website as well. So I just say thank you very much. Thank you to my backstage team as well for putting this all together. And thank you for attending. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck in your work.